My name is Dana Chandler. I have been accused of double homicide, and I am innocent.
Is it hard to believe you're sitting here again to talk about this?
Yeah, it really is. I didn't think 20 years later that this is what would be happening in this situation. July 7th of 2002, my dad and his fiancée, Karen, were shot and killed in their beds. I was 17 and my brother was 15, and there was just shock. The only person that hated them was my mom.
Dana.
What should people understand about the fact that you, Dana Chandler's daughter, thinks Dana Chandler killed your father?
I do have a mind of my own, and I'm not biased in this situation. I don't want it to be her. I want the truth to come out, and I want true justice for my dad and Karen.
Mike and Karen were together for the weekend alone. They did everything. They loved each other.
They drove up to a casino, spent a few hours there, and then arrived back home in the early morning hours. They were found Sunday afternoon, July 7th.
The killer made it downstairs, shot Karen Harkness multiple times, shot Mike Sisco multiple times.
It's unnerving to think that somebody could sneak into a house and do this and leave quietly and nobody knows about it till the next day. Whoever it was that did this hated these people. They wanted them dead and they wanted to make sure they were dead.
It could be the justice two families have long been waiting for, the arrest of Dana Chandler in the 2002 killings of Karen Harkness and Michael Sisco.
You have a trial where she's found guilty.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of the crime of murder.
And then the Kansas Supreme Court comes and says, this is prosecutorial misconduct, and it's so bad that we're going to go ahead and overturn her conviction. You have a new trial.
The jury is unable to reach a unanimous verdict.
And now they've had a hung jury, and they're gonna try her again. That just is almost unheard of.
For the third time, Dana Chandler is back on trial with opening statements today as Chandler will represent herself in this case.
I knew it was different. I just didn't know what was gonna happen. I could never have predicted it.
When officers talked to friends, family, co-workers, they all said the same thing. You guys should look at Dana Chandler.
The truth is that she murdered them.
I did not kill Mike Sisco. I did not kill Karen Harkness. I am an innocent woman.
Dana Chandler has spent decades maintaining her innocence against allegations she was responsible for the 2002 murders of her ex-husband, Mike Sisco, and his girlfriend, Karen Harkness.
My liberty, my freedom is hanging in the balance.
In 2025, Chandler took on her own defense, representing herself in the third trial the state brought against her for the murders.
I wanted to understand what happened and why, and actually know the truth of what happened.
Haley Seal is Dana Chandler and Mike Sisco's daughter. She and other family members of Mike and Karen have spent decades grieving, searching for answers and for justice.
Hi, Dana. Harold Dow, CBS News.
48 Hours first started covering the murders in 2008 and spoke with individuals involved several times over the years.
It's hard to swallow, and it's hard to believe. It's insane.
For Haley, it all started on July 7, 2002. She learned her father and Karen had been killed in Karen's Topeka, Kansas home.
I immediately just saw a bunch of tape around the house and police, and my grandma was sitting in there, and she just told me that they had been shot.
The night before the murders, Mike and Karen enjoyed an evening at a casino about an hour outside of Topeka. Surveillance footage shows them leaving about 1:30 a.m. They then stopped to get coffee. The last time video captured Karen alive.
They were extremely happy. You could just see that.
Karen's father, Harold Warswick.
Everything they did was for each other.
The day after Mike and Karen's night out, a family get-together had been planned at Karen's house. Relatives thought the couple might be announcing they were engaged.
And I rang the doorbell and knocked on the glass and couldn't raise anybody. I thought, this is strange.
Karen's father, who has since died, recalled that he entered Karen's home that afternoon through an open sliding door. Didn't see any sign of her or Mike, so he headed downstairs to the bedroom.
Just I got to the foot of the stairs, I could see Karen. And I said, oh, Christ. I knew she was dead. Then I found Mike on the outside of the bed.
Harold would then call 911.
I've just located my daughter, and she's downstairs and she's dead.
I got a radio call just after 2 o'clock on July 7, 2002.
Richard Voley, now retired, was the Topeka Police Department's lead detective on the case.
It was a report of 2 dead bodies in a basement.
5 bullets had struck 53-year-old Karen, including in her back and buttocks. Mike, 47, suffered between 5 and 7 gunshot wounds. The couple had been in bed. The rest of the house appears undisturbed. Investigators found more than $1,000 in cash, a Rolex watch, and other jewelry left behind. Robbery was quickly ruled out. To understand who might want Karen and Mike dead, police turned to their families for information.
What we're left with is an emotional killing. It's an emotional execution.
Mike, a salesperson for a welding company, and Karen, who worked in the hospitality industry, were both previously married and now divorced. The well-liked couple had been dating about 4 years.
It was a surprise to everybody that this would happen to somebody like her.
Karen's children, Chad and Aaron, were in their 20s at the time of the murders.
My mom was an amazing woman. She didn't have enemies. And I remember telling her on several occasions that if I could be half the mom that she was to me, that I would be the best mom in the world.
Mike had custody of his 2 children, Haley, then 17, and Dustin, 15.
My dad was really in my life growing up. He was really my hero.
Haley's relationship with her dad was more complicated.
I wasn't happy with my dad. I wasn't happy with my mom. I wasn't happy at my school.
By Haley's own admission, she was a difficult teenager.
My dad gave me an ultimatum. Either you follow my rules or you move out.
Choosing to live with her then boyfriend, Chris.
I moved in with Chris, and then my dad was killed.
That defiance made Haley and Chris of interest to police. They were polygraphed and questioned.
I'm just curious, is everything all right with your dad and everything?
Yeah. We weren't really getting along for a little while.
Authorities said their alibis checked out, as did the alibis of Karen's daughter, Erin, and her husband, Jeff Sutton. Karen's son, Chad, was also questioned.
I was hooked up to a polygraph machine and asked if I had murdered my mother or in any way participated in the murder of my mother.
Police concluded none of them were involved, but family members thought they knew who was responsible. Mike's ex-wife, Dana Chandler.
She never fit in.
Kathy Boots, Mike's sister, watched Dana and Mike's relationship deteriorate. After 15 years of marriage, the couple went through a bitter divorce, finalized in 1998. Mike's relatives say Dana had a drinking problem. and she sporadically stalked Mike during and after the divorce, with frequent calls and bizarre visits.
The kids were upstairs in their room, and we heard a noise, and there she was in the middle of the night, jumping on a trampoline in the backyard of Mike's home.
I think she became obsessed with the fact that Mike was moving on with his life.
Mark Boots, Mike's brother-in-law.
And then when Karen entered the picture, that's when things really started, I think, escalating.
Mike kept track of some of the incidents from 1998 in a day planner, writing, July 28th, Dana stalking neighborhood at 8:30. Caught her. She left. November 12th, Dana came in house while I was at Karen's from 7 to 11. Went through stuff.
She was willing to travel great distances to show up back in his life.
According to the Boots, the last time Dana showed up at Mike's home was in the spring of 2002, several months before the murders. Kathy said Mike told her Dana went there to talk about moving back in.
She said, the kids are getting older, they're having different issues with themselves now, they need both parents. I think I should move back in and we should parent together.
All this harassment and stalking had come to the point that Mike told me that he and Karen now feared for their lives.
Mark says Mike made that clear to him on a fishing trip 9 days before the murders.
He turned to me and said, Mark, you're going to wake up and find me dead, and I want you to know who did it, Dana Chandler.
But Dana Chandler lived 8 hours away in Denver, and there was no sign that she had been in Karen's house in Topeka the night of the murders.
The victims were doing absolutely nothing and may not have seen it coming at all.
Investigators were trying to determine who would gun down Mike Sisco and Karen Harkness as they lay in bed. Detective Richard Voley called Mike's ex-wife, Dana Chandler, to inform her of Mike's murder.
Your husband was found shot to death today, this afternoon. Your ex-husband, I'm sorry. Can you tell me when the last time was that you talked to him?
Dana, Voley says, did not ask many questions and did not seem concerned. She would later say she was very upset on that call. But only Voley's side of their conversation was recorded due to a technical error, he said, on his part. The next evening, Chandler called the Topeka Police Department, leaving a message on a different officer's voicemail.
Hi, my name is Dana Chandler, and I got a very disturbing phone call last night. Someone had said that my ex-husband had been killed, and I'm just calling to see if that's true or not.
Dana would later explain her call was simply seeking confirmation. Given the personal nature of the murders, no signs of a burglary, and those stories about a messy divorce and stalking, Dana Chandler became the main suspect. Detective Voley decided to talk with Chandler in person, recording this audio 4 days after the murders.
So tell me about what happened on the 6th.
I got up and I had my morning coffee.
But again, there was an issue with the recording. In most of the rest of the conversation, Dana is difficult to hear. Detective Voley recounted what he said she told him.
She said she'd been at home Saturday morning, that's July 6th, and then made a couple of errand stops.
Dana said she bought cigarettes, snacks, and a car cigarette lighter at several stores around Denver, and then got gas. But Voley says she failed to mention one purchase he saw on a credit card receipt.
She'd bought 2 5-gallon gas cans as well.
Voley wondered why she didn't tell him, and why she would even need gas cans unless she had been planning a trip, perhaps to Kansas, and didn't want to stop for gas along the way. According to Voley, Dana had also said after running those errands, she went home to her Denver apartment.
Didn't have any visitors, no contact with anybody, And the next day, got up and went for a drive in the mountains at 10 o'clock in the morning.
But Voley couldn't verify that Dana was in her apartment the night of the murders, nor that she took a drive in the mountains the next day. Voley said the area Dana described driving through would have meant she'd have to pass Rocky Mountain National Park surveillance cameras. Those cameras were checked. Voley said there was no sign of her car.
The particular person that I had view that tape looked at every frame slowly. She was never there.
Investigators also reviewed Dana's cell phone records. They said that while she tended to use her cell phone frequently, she, oddly, had no activity around the time of the murders.
What we found was there was a 27-hour window where her phone wasn't used.
Still, there was no DNA, no fingerprints, or other forensic evidence to tie Dana to the killings. The gun used in the murders hadn't been found, though investigators learned the bullets were from an Israeli weapons manufacturer. And Dana would go on to say she didn't even own a gun. But family members remained convinced that Dana was responsible for the murders. They say they pushed to have a meeting with then DA Robert Hecht. Tim Sisco, Mike's brother.
I specifically went into this meeting wanting to know if he would pursue a circumstantial case, and the answer was, without that murder weapon, we don't have enough hard evidence to move this forward.
Mike's and Karen's families grew increasingly frustrated and decided to take action, looking for more information about Dana's possible involvement in the murders.
I put her picture up everywhere. Have you seen this person?
Several months after the murders, having more questions than answers, Mike's sister Kathy said she and their mom Carol went searching for clues, even lifting up manhole covers and looking in rest stop bathrooms for the gun used in the murders.
We thought, maybe she threw the gun somewhere. So I would stand on a toilet and try and push a tile up.
They found nothing. But Haley, Dana and Mike's daughter, was also working the case.
I felt the need to do something. I didn't want to just sit back with my hands tied and helpless.
In 2005, 3 years after the murders, Haley began secretly recording conversations with her mother, trying to learn what happened to her dad and Karen.
I think that the only way I can really move on with a relationship with you is if we can get it, if you can just tell me yourself that you did it.
Number one, I didn't do it, and number two, I don't know what happened, Haley.
One thing Haley asked about was why her mother had no cell phone activity for 27 hours around the time of the murders.
Why did it have no calls and wasn't home the whole time? You knew it could be traced. I was in the mountains, I didn't have a signal.
Dana insisted she had nothing to do with the murders, but did say she had violent thoughts about Mike.
I said I could kill him. Ever think about killing him? No, but I did. But honestly, I go over it with you.
The official investigation, though, seemed stalled. So authorities asked Vernon Geberth, a homicide and forensic consultant and former New York City Police Department detective, to review case files. In 2007, nearly 5 years after the murders, he issued a report concluding Dana Chandler is the one and only person who had the motive, means, and opportunity to commit these murders. It was Geberth who brought the case to the attention of 48 Hours. In 2009, 48 Hours aired its first report on the murders and tried to talk with Dana Chandler.
Did you know anything about the death of Michael and Karen?
I have no idea what happened to Michael and Karen.
48 Hours ended the episode asking viewers to contact police if they had any information. Again, the case seemed to be going nowhere.
Recon this morning.
But 2 years later, a new DA, Chad Taylor, decided he was willing to take a chance with the evidence they had. He chose to move the case forward and arrest Dana Chandler.
One team come up this way, one team come up here.
With our cameras rolling,
laid eyes on her this morning.
Law enforcement zeroed in on Dana Chandler in Oklahoma, where she was staying at the time. Taylor didn't just help plan the arrest, but went on it with a gun at the ready.
Get out of the car! Both hands out of the car!
And on July 24th, 2011, Dana Chandler was in custody, charged with the murders of Mike Sisco and Karen Harkness.
I hit a point where I didn't know if justice would ever be served.
For Haley, who was convinced her mother killed her father, Dana's arrest was nearly a decade in the making.
It was such a feeling that it was unbelievable.
She was determined to get justice as she prepared to face Dana in court.
I've made it this far. I can do anything.
All right.
In March 2012, Dana Chandler went on trial. Jackie Spradling, then Chief Deputy DA, began by referring to those conversations Haley had taped years earlier with her mother.
I could kill him. I thought about killing him. These are the words of this defendant about her ex-husband, Mike Sisco.
In her opening statement, Spradling suggested a possible motive for murder.
2 days before the homicides, the defendant called Mike. Mike at this time told the defendant in that 5-minute phone call that he and Karen were going to be married.
But there is no recording of that call.
It's easy to make allegations. It's difficult to prove those allegations.
And in his opening, defense attorney Mark Bennett argued the case against Dana Chandler was all speculation.
That there is no evidence that places Dana Chandler in or near the Harkness residence on July 6 or 7, 2002.
But to authorities, there was the question about exactly where Dana was during that time. Detective Voley says she told him she was home Saturday, the night of the murders, and then drove through the mountains the next day. But Dana's business acquaintance, Jeff Bailey, testified Dana told him something different, that she slept in her car in the mountains the Saturday night of the murders.
She told me that the story she was giving me was the truth, and the story that she'd given to the law enforcement was not the truth.
And prosecutors told the jury Dana did not use her cell phone for 27 hours the weekend of the murders. Remember, Haley accused her mother of trying to avoid being tracked. Voley found another instance when Dana didn't use her phone a month before the murders.
There were no calls registered. There were some calls came to the phone, but none were picked up.
And prosecutors say that's important because during that time, a month before the murders, was Dana's dry run for the killings. They called her friend Ann Carrender to the stand. Carrender says Dana told her she had driven to Topeka.
She had gone to Mike's house through the window. Nobody was home.
What else did she tell you?
That she had gone and sat outside Karen's house.
Spradling says Dana was obsessed with Mike and presented evidence that in the 6 months leading up to the murders, she called Mike and Karen more than 600 times. The defense argued Dana was calling to talk to her kids, but Haley remembered her mother's calls differently.
What was the thing that she talked to you the most about?
She talked about my dad a lot, and I really feel like she was really just obsessed with him.
An FBI analyst testified Dana often called late at night and frequently made repeated calls in a short time period, including a month before the murders.
On June 3rd, she made 17 calls in 18 minutes.
Both of Dana's children testified for the prosecution, saying that their mother also had a history of stalking their father.
She took me and my sister with her to go spy on my dad, and so we were in the car, and she told us, we're just going to be her little helpers.
She asked if I would go up to the house with her, and we did, and she was looking in all the windows, and she told me to look in the windows. And
Did you?
I did.
Okay. What was it that she was looking at in there?
I think that she was thinking there was a lady in there with my dad.
Haley also testified about those recordings she made talking with her mother. During one of them, Dana, who attended Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, gave an explanation as to why she bought those gas cans.
I ran into a girl that had run out of gas at an AA meeting, and so I went and got gas for her. She asked me for money, and we don't give people money at AA.
Prosecutor Spradling told the jury that she believed Chandler used those 2 5-gallon gas cans to have enough gas so she would not have to stop and potentially be seen near the crime scene. But Chandler's attorney argued there was no proof she was ever in Topeka during the time of the murders.
Did you or any other members of the Topeka Police Department ever find an eyewitness that put the defendant Dana Chandler in Topeka, Kansas on either July 6 or July 7, 2002?
No.
The closest law enforcement was able to come was here, at a gas station in Wakini, Kansas, nearly halfway between Denver and Topeka. Clerk Patty Williams wasn't sure, but she thought she might have seen Dana the night of the murders.
Patty was shown a picture of the defendant. Patty indicated that she was 70% sure that that was the woman who had been there.
But by the time Chandler went on trial, Patty Williams had died. A different worker from the gas station testified about seeing a black car that looked similar to the one Chandler drove that day. But she said it might have had license plates from Virginia. When it was the defense's turn, Bennett pointed out there was no proof Dana was ever there.
Wasn't any receipt from Wakini, was there?
No.
And Bennett questioned whether Detective Voley investigated other suspects, like 2 men with criminal records who had stolen checks from Mike Sisco and cashed one after the murders.
That didn't make him a suspect?
No, because the check wasn't taken from Karen Harkness's house where the murders occurred. The check was actually taken from Mike Sisco's house where the murders did not occur.
And one of the men was in jail when the murders occurred. In closing arguments, Bennett reiterated there was no forensic evidence linking Chandler to the crime.
All this time they've been trying to put her in Kansas when this happened. And for 9.5 years, they've come up dry.
Spradling reminded the jury of Dana's stalking behavior and tried to make sure they knew just how scared Mike was of Dana. She said Mike had gotten a protection from abuse order against Dana.
So he got a court order saying she has to stay away. The protection from abuse order did not stop the defendant, though.
After 2 weeks of testimony, it took the jury 83 minutes to reach a verdict.
Defendant would please stand.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of the crime of murder in the first degree as charged in count 1.
I feel better in the sense that my dad's killer is paying for their actions. I don't feel better that my mom is capable of killing my dad.
When it was time for sentencing, Haley asked that her mom receive the maximum sentence.
We each have a deep scar in our souls from what this monster has done.
But Chandler would also get a chance to speak.
But most importantly, I deny that I murdered Mike or Karen. I am innocent. I did not murder Mike or Karen.
Dana Chandler was sentenced to life in prison. But soon that verdict would be called into question.
A lot of my mind has been focused on her getting away with killing my dad, and just drags me down.
For years, Haley Seal's thoughts were consumed with proving her mother killed her father, Mike Sisco, and Karen Harkness. With Dana Chandler in prison, Haley was relieved she could concentrate on other things. But her relief was tinged with pain.
I want to focus on my future and what I want to do with my life. I want to be everything my mom wasn't.
But Haley's focus would turn again to the case. Dana Chandler almost immediately began filing motions as she worked to appeal her conviction. She and her attorney cited, among other things, the actions of prosecutor Jackie Spradling. In particular, statements Spradling made at trial about that protection from abuse order.
Mike got a protection from abuse, a court order. He applied and said, "Hey, judge, please order this woman to stay away from me." And the judge agreed.
And that is just a blatant misstatement.
Stacy Schlimmer, one of Chandler's appeal attorneys, was never able to find a protection from abuse order.
I went through the whole case. I went and looked for every possible order I could find, and there wasn't one that she was referring to.
In 2018, Schlimmer argued that Jackie Spradling's actions constituted prosecutorial misconduct.
I think that Ms. Chandler never had an opportunity at a fair trial from the get-go.
Schlimmer contended the case against Dana Chandler should be thrown out. The court agreed.
The Kansas Supreme Court held that it's so bad that we're going to go ahead and overturn her conviction.
Other issues about statements Spradling made at trial also came up, including describing a route Dana took between Kansas and Denver when there was no evidence that she drove that way.
She drove directly up to Nebraska, and after she gets on Nebraska, she turns around and goes home.
They just kind of hypothesized, well, she must have went up and went over from Nebraska. There was no evidence of that at all.
Schlimmer also contended the state did not have enough evidence to prove Dana Chandler's guilt.
We argued insufficiency of evidence as an issue for appeal.
Meaning you don't think prosecutors had enough to make a legitimate case?
Jurors didn't have enough evidence before them if you took out all the evidence that should have never been presented or told to them incorrectly.
The Kansas Supreme Court described Jackie Spradling's actions as, quote, intolerable acts of deception, and she was disbarred. 48 Hours reached out to Spradling, but did not receive a response.
When a case gets reversed, like a case like this, we essentially have an innocent woman who's been convicted of crime because of the prosecutor, or we have a family that has now a reverse conviction that has to go through the system again.
Either way, there's an injustice.
Right. So that conduct is going to affect someone.
The court did decide, though, there was sufficient evidence to retry Dana Chandler, if the district attorney chose to.
When I found out that this Kansas Supreme Court overturned the verdict, it was very shocking. What does this mean? Will the DA's office retry her?
Were you angry with the prosecutor who was cited for misconduct?
No, I've never been angry with her. I think it was an innocent mistake.
Had Jackie not made those comments, we wouldn't be sitting here today. This would be over.
Chad Harkness, Karen's son, takes a different view of Jackie Spradling's actions.
Now, all these years later, we're still having to, live through this again, and it's not right, it's not fair.
The decision whether to retry Dana Chandler was now in the hands of Shawnee County's new DA, Mike Kagay.
We analyzed every aspect of the case, and ultimately we came to the conclusion that we believed justice demanded that we move forward and we pursue another trial.
Pursuing that would take years. Dana Chandler remained incarcerated. She and her defense lawyers argued she should be set free and fought against having another trial.
What were those years like?
Unbelievable.
For Haley, the delays seemed endless. Dana and her lawyers filed nearly 400 motions, including ones requesting a change of judge, to retain an investigator, for her bond to be reduced, and to disqualify the Shawnee County District Attorney's Office. And through it all, she fired several of her lawyers.
She went through 7 lawyers in that time, and between representing herself.
There were also dozens of hearings, including one where Haley was called to testify, and Dana did the questioning.
She took me on the stand for at least 45 minutes, and she directly questioned me.
What was that like?
It was the most awful thing I've ever... I mean, the suspect in the killing of my dad is now having the power to question me on the stand and talk to me.
Not just the suspect in the killing of your dad, your own mother.
Yeah. I mean, it was awful.
But Haley was willing to take whatever steps necessary to ensure her mother would stand trial again for the murders.
If she could bring out something to prove where she was, to say she didn't do it, prove she didn't do it, that's not just for me. That's for her and her own freedom. But she can't, and she hasn't.
Two innocent people were murdered in our community. That demands justice.
Although Dana Chandler's conviction had been overturned, prosecutors were determined to retry her for the murders of Mike Sisco and Karen Harkness. By 2021, the organization Miracle of Innocence got involved, advocating for Dana.
Dana Chandler was someone who we believed in her innocence. When we looked at the case, the facts was just nothing connected this lady to the crime.
Darrell Burton is the co-founder of Miracle of Innocence. He's someone who was wrongfully imprisoned and had his murder conviction reversed. He says before sending someone to prison, the case needs to be more convincing than the one made against Dana Chandler.
There's no evidence, no fingerprints, no DNA, no confession, no weapon, no witnesses, nothing. When it comes to, these kinds of crimes of murder, you just got to have more than that.
Dana and her attorneys also raised other issues as they tried to get the case dismissed. Some allegations related to the 2009 48 Hours broadcast. Chandler falsely accused law enforcement of forming a partnership with 48 Hours to film an episode aimed at convincing the public that Ms. Chandler murdered Mike Sisco and Karen Harkness.
What do you make of the idea that if 48 Hours had not reported, starting in 2009, on this case, that Dana Chandler would never have been arrested or tried?
I don't think it was 48 hours. 2009 is a lot different than when they arrested her. They arrested her 3 years later. I think the family was what kept it going. They believe that Miss Chandler did this. It was the new prosecutor, and it was the family probably saying, hey, we need justice done in this.
But Stacy Schlimmer, Dana's former appeal attorney, does take issue with the handling of the 2011 arrest and the show of force.
You've seen Dana Chandler's arrest many times.
Right.
And it bothers you.
It bothers me a lot.
48 Hours, as well as the Topeka Capital Journal, were given advance notice of the arrest by the office of then DA, Chad Taylor.
Are you bothered by law enforcement, or are you bothered by the fact that there were cameras there?
I'm bothered by the prosecutor. I'm bothered by the district attorney showing up at an arrest and having that arrest filmed.
So they wanted video of law enforcement with their guns out?
I think they wanted then the public to see that. That to me it seemed like such a production for a case. That prosecutor should never have done that.
Ultimately, the various arguments Dana Chandler's team made to dismiss the case were unsuccessful. Chandler's new trial was scheduled for the summer of 2022. Before the trial began, 48 Hours again tried to speak with Dana Chandler. She said she would only agree to an interview if CBS paid her $1 million bond. We declined.
Never thought we'd be sitting here again and getting ready to start a retrial on this. It's just mind-blowing.
Chad Harkness, Karen's son, was relieved the DA's office decided to retry Dana Chandler, but was concerned about going through this yet another time.
Just us kids having to relive this again, and it makes me sick.
Haley, too, was not looking forward to another trial, but said testifying again could give her some control of the situation.
If I can realize my power, and it gives me courage to go forward because I know the truth. The truth is that she murdered them.
The passage of time has left Haley with so much loss. Loss she holds her mother responsible for. And as a mom herself, having married her high school boyfriend, Chris, Haley's feelings are even more complicated.
When you think of your mom, do you think mother? Or do you think Dana?
I think Dana. Yeah, she's Dana to me. Actually, mom is an ucky word to me, to the point where I don't even like my kids to call me mom. I don't like mom. Mom is a very hurtful person.
No matter the name, Dana Chandler is someone Haley will have to face again in court, and someone who will eventually tell her side of the story.
Start by stating my name. My name is Dana Chandler. I, as everyone knows, have been accused of double homicide, and I am innocent.
They were found Sunday afternoon, July 7th.
My dad and his fiancée, Karen, were shot and killed in their beds. I was 17 and my brother was 15, and there was just shock.
The killer made it downstairs, shot Karen Harkness multiple times, shot Mike Sisco multiple times. Whoever it was that did this hated these people.
The only person that hated them was my mom.
Dana. What should people understand about the fact that you, Dana Chandler's daughter, thinks Dana Chandler killed your father?
I do have a mind of my own, and I'm not biased in this situation. I don't want it to be her. I want the truth to come out.
I wanted to help the police, so I started to record my conversations with her.
I think that the only way I can really move on with a relationship with you is if we can get it, if you can just tell me yourself that you did it. Number one, I didn't do it, and number two, I don't know what happened, Haley.
Did you know anything about the death of Michael and Karen?
I have no idea what happened to Michael and Karen.
I hit a point where I didn't know if justice would ever be served. I needed justice for my dad and for Karen.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of the crime of murder in the first degree.
I feel better in the sense that my dad's killer is paying for their actions. I don't feel better that my mom is capable of killing my dad.
And then the Kansas Supreme Court comes and says, this is prosecutorial misconduct. We're going to go ahead and overturn her conviction. You have a new trial.
My liberty, my freedom is hanging in the balance.
If she could bring out something to prove she didn't do it, that's for her and her own freedom, but she can't, and she hasn't.
I did not kill Mike Sisco.
She would not hesitate to get revenge on me.
I did not kill Karen Harkness.
I know the truth.
I am an innocent woman.
The truth is that she murdered them. She scares me.
Your mom scares you.
I wanted to understand what happened and why, and actually know the truth of what happened.
For 2 decades, Haley Seal has been waiting for justice in the murders of her father, Mike Sisco, and his girlfriend, Karen Harkness.
This hasn't been resolved.
In 2002, multiple bullets struck 53-year-old Karen and 47-year-old Mike as they lay in bed in Karen's Kansas home. Authorities believed it was a crime of passion, as the rest of the house seemed undisturbed, with money and jewelry left behind. And Haley believed it was her mother, Dana Chandler, who was responsible.
The truth is that she was in Karen's house on July 7th in the middle of the night with a gun, and she shot them both multiple times. And she murdered them. I hate that that's the truth, but it is the truth.
I've never seen a case like this. Even
Darrell Burton is co-founder of Miracle of Innocence, an organization that paid for Dana Chandler's lawyers and supports individuals it believes are wrongfully convicted.
No DNA, no fingerprints, no confession, no weapon. It just doesn't add up.
In the summer of 2022, Dana Chandler was on trial for the second time for the murders of Mike Sisco and Karen Harkness. As in her first trial, the defense focused on all that was lacking in the case against Chandler.
There is no evidence that she was in the Harkness residence, no evidence she was in Topeka, there's no evidence she was in the state of Kansas.
Defense attorney Tom Bath insisted Dana Chandler was in Colorado at the time of the murders, more than 500 miles away, and faulted investigators for zeroing in on her.
Everything they looked at, everything they examined, excluded Dana.
The lack of physical evidence was acknowledged by Shawnee County Deputy District Attorney Charles Kidd.
Science is not going to solve this case. This case is not based on DNA.
Instead, the state focused on evidence such as Dana's hatred of her ex-husband and his girlfriend.
This case is based on jealousy, rage, and obsession.
Prosecutors presented evidence they say showed that obsession, including records of more than 600 phone calls Dana made to Karen and Mike in the 6 months before the murders. And they introduced witnesses who said Mike and Karen told them some of those calls were menacing. Karen's coworker, Kim Warrender.
And she said she had been up all night receiving phone calls from Dana.
She told you she was afraid?
Very afraid.
Erin Sutton also testified that her mother, Karen Harkness, was scared of Dana. She spoke about messages she said she heard that Dana left on her mother's phone.
She would call my mom horrible names.
And like what kind of names would she call her?
She would call her a whore.
In addition to testimony about calls Dana Chandler made, there was also attention paid to when there was no call activity on her phone, specifically during 27 hours the weekend of the murders. Authorities believe Dana Chandler's phone was turned off so it could not be traced as she traveled to Kansas. But the defense suggested it could have just been spotty cell phone service in Colorado. Prosecutors told the jury about a purchase Dana made the day before the murders, but failed to mention to investigators. Kit asked Richard Voley, the lead detective on the case, about the purchase.
Can you tell us what that is?
This is an AutoZone receipt. It shows the first two purchases were $5 gas cans.
Authorities wondered why Dana didn't tell them about the gas cans, and why she would need gas cans unless she was planning a trip, perhaps to Kansas, and did not want to stop for gas along the way. And there was the issue of Dana Chandler's alibi. According to Detective Voley, a changing, unconfirmable one. One witness testified that Dana said she was in the mountains in Colorado at the time of the murders. But Detective Voley testified Chandler told him she was at home in her Denver apartment.
She said she'd stayed at her house, had no guests or phone calls, and that she turned in about 9 o'clock.
A friend of Dana's testified about something authorities thought might have been a dry run for the murders. She said about a month before the killings, Dana called and told her about a trip she made to Mike's home.
She told me that she knew nobody was in the house and that she went into Mike's home through the window. After that, she did go to his girlfriend's house and sat outside her house waiting for them to come home, but they didn't show up.
Did she tell you what she did when she got into Mike's house?
She wanted to see what it looked like on the inside.
But Dana's attorney questioned the reliability of her testimony, pointing out she may have gotten some dates wrong regarding calls with Dana.
It must not have been a Monday.
But 20 years ago, you said it was a Monday, right?
Sure.
Testimony about Chandler's behavior also came from Kathy Boots, Mike's sister. She described an incident several years before the murders that she said she witnessed while staying at Mike's house.
We went to bed that night, and I woke up in the early morning hours to a noise out in the backyard, and we had left the back porch lights on. And I looked out through the blinds, and Dana was jumping on the trampoline out back.
And Mike's brother-in-law, Mark Boots, recounted a disturbing conversation he said he had with Mike 9 days before the murders.
Mike told me that the patterns of harassment had increased and that he feared for he and Karen's lives.
Mike and Dana's daughter, Haley, was going to be in the uncomfortable position of testifying against her mother.
And who is Dana Chandler to you?
She's my mom.
I was absolutely still nervous and scared. Being up there, it causes conflict.
As Haley Seal reflected back on testifying against her mother, Dana Chandler, she recalled the stress she was under. As a prosecution witness, Haley was asked to describe some of her mother's behavior. Behavior Haley said she found obsessive.
Was there a time where you were asked to spy on your dad?
Yeah.
Haley recounted an incident after her parents split up, when she said Dana drove her and her brother to Mike's home, and they all sat in the car to watch the house.
She said, "Come on, we need to watch your dad, you can be my little helpers." She had me go with her to the house after so long, and she wanted to look in the windows.
Did she look in the windows?
Yeah, we both looked in the windows, and she said, "Did you see that? Did you see that?" And I said, "No, I didn't see anything."
It was episodes like that which led Haley early on to think her mother could be responsible for the murders.
I always suspected she had something to do with it because of the history of her harassment, stalking, hatred, talking bad about them to us all the time.
Haley testified about some of the ways her mother expressed that dislike of her father, like the demeaning ways Dana referred to him in emails and online chats, including ones where Dana referred to Mike as it, sent when Haley was 14 years old.
Did she call him manipulative and deceiving?
Yes.
And then calls him a rapist?
Yeah.
And just a couple of lines down, "I hate his guts."
Yeah.
Are those things that your mom typed to you?
Yes.
Nobody can say that you were in Colorado that weekend.
Also played in court were those conversations Haley secretly recorded with her mom as she tried to learn more about Dana's possible involvement in the murders.
In all the conversations you had with her over the days, weeks, months, even years after this happened, she never told you something that made you think, well, at least my mom didn't do it.
No, every time I talked to her, I felt more and more confident that she definitely had something to do with it.
And perhaps most telling to Haley was a conversation played in court where Dana said she had thought about killing Mike.
Ever think about killing him? No, but I did.
In one of those discussions, Haley asked her mother about why she bought those 2 gas cans, which authorities thought could have been used to help drive round trip from Denver to Topeka without stopping in Kansas for fuel. Dana, who'd been a problem drinker, explained she bought them for someone else, a woman she met at AA.
She asked me for money, and we don't give people money at AA. I said, "I'll go buy you some gas."
The prosecutor asked Haley if she was able to learn anything more about that woman from Dana.
She wouldn't tell you who that person was?
No, she didn't.
But Dana's defense team argued those recorded conversations proved nothing about the murders. And regarding the 2 gas cans, it maintained that the 10 extra gallons the cans could hold would not have been enough for Dana to drive round trip from Denver to Topeka without still needing to stop for fuel. The defense accused authorities of tunnel vision, including not looking more thoroughly at other suspects. And her lawyer said Dana Chandler never owned a 9mm gun, the type of weapon used in the murders, which was never found. What was found were unusual bullets made in Israel.
Israel Military Industries, that's the manufacturer.
Dana's attorney questioned a firearm examiner who had worked with the Kansas Bureau of Investigation about those bullets.
Is that a bullet ammunition you typically see?
Actually, we had not seen that before, and so it was a little bit unusual to us.
The prosecution, though, explained there were places one could buy those bullets.
Could that ammo have been brought into Kansas and sold at a gun show?
Yes, sir.
Could have been exchanged by individuals?
Yes, sir.
There were other parts of the investigation that the defense argued supported its case. There was forensic work it said eliminated Dana Chandler. Unidentified fingerprints found at the house did not match Chandler. None of Dana's DNA was found at the murder scene, nor were any fibers found from her clothing or any of her hair.
I did not find any hairs that were consistent with the known samples coming from Miss Chandler.
In 20 years, the state had no evidence whatsoever that placed Dana Chandler in Karen Harkness's home, in the city of Topeka, or in the state of Kansas.
After 3 weeks of testimony, that lack of physical evidence would be the defense's theme in its closing argument.
Each and every time they tested something, it excluded Dana.
From the beginning, I told you this case is about obsession, jealousy, rage.
The state focused on Dana's behavior, her calls, emails, and her own family's testimony against her.
The defendant clearly hated Karen and Mike. Words from her own mouth and her own fingers typing those messages.
A lot of evidence about Dana's bad behavior. That's true. That's not evidence. They have not proven this case beyond a reasonable doubt.
On August 25th, 2022, the case went to the jury, and Haley was waiting for a verdict.
I've really tried to trust the process, as I knew I didn't have any control over it, so it was going to be what it was going to be.
But the wait to find out what the verdict would be was a long one.
Tonight's 48 Hours will continue.
I can only describe it as evil.
Follow and listen to Train to Kill, The Dog Trainer, The Heiress, and The Bodyguard on the free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts.
When you retire to the jury room, you will first select one of your members as presiding juror. The person selected will preside over
The case in the second trial of Dana Chandler for the murders of Mike Sisco and Karen Harkness went to the jury on August 25th, 2022. That day came and went, as did several more.
Members of the jury, would you like to recess for the day?
Yes, we would like.
After about 4 days, I started to get nervous and think, wow, this actually could not come back in a guilty verdict. And I started to think about that possibility. And so I prayed. And I just trusted that if she did get away with this, that life would have to go on, right?
Members of the gallery, I would ask that you just please refrain from any outbursts.
After 6 days of deliberating, Dana Chandler would learn her fate.
I understand that the jury is unable to reach a unanimous verdict at this time. Is that correct?
That is correct.
The jury informed the judge they were deadlocked.
You're hung at this time, is that correct?
There were 7 votes to convict and 5 to acquit.
We did what we could with what we had.
Ben Alford and Carrie Kimes were 2 members of the jury who voted to find Chandler not guilty.
I never saw actual evidence that Dana Chandler was ever in the Harkness home. I can't send somebody to spend the rest of their life in prison if you can't even prove she left Colorado that weekend.
The science is not going to solve this case.
Everything that was tested for DNA proved inconclusive, and that's pretty remarkable.
But for juror Randy Edwards, the state's depiction of Dana Chandler's behavior was persuasive evidence.
She was beyond upset. She was obsessed.
He also found those conversations Haley recorded with her mother to be convincing and voted to convict.
Ever think about killing him? No, but I did.
When I was able to comprehend that Dana said that she had thought of killing Mike, that was probably the piece that pushed me beyond any question of reasonable doubt anymore.
There was a split verdict, but the majority of the jury was in favor of a conviction. And that was meaningful.
DA Mike Kagay decided to retry Dana Chandler.
The next issue that we have before the court is a motion to modify bond.
Her lawyers convinced the court to reduce her bond, which allowed her to be released with supervision as she awaited the next trial.
The court is going to direct that she have GPS monitoring.
Welcome home. Welcome home, Dana.
After spending more than a decade incarcerated, Dana Chandler celebrated her freedom with Daryl Burton and Miracle of Innocence.
Anybody who's getting out of prison after you've been in prison for any length of time, it's a joyous occasion. You're happy that someone's been released, and you know also feel like, well, maybe it's a good chance that we can mount a defense and get her totally acquitted.
As a condition of her release, Dana was not allowed to contact her children. Still, Haley worried about her safety. She is married to Chris Seal, her high school boyfriend, and is a mother of 3.
I'm scared to death that she's going to hurt me or she's going to affect my kids in some way.
Haley's fear only grew when Dana made this post to her Facebook page. Chandler complained about her treatment at trial, calling it a kangaroo court. And in the background, she showed images of Haley's children. Haley says Dana somehow learned which church she attended and downloaded a live stream of a service to create the photos.
It was chilling and it was disturbing. I feel like it was a direct message to me.
And what was the message?
Intimidation. I don't care about your boundaries.
Her belief that her mother committed the murders remains unwavering and, she says, disturbing.
She's my mom, but if you're my mom, why would you do that to my dad? For your kid's sake, maybe. Maybe that would be a reason not to do it. Being a mother now, I have a new perspective. It becomes even more unreal now.
Also unreal to Haley, thoughts of a 3rd trial.
What are your expectations for yet again another trial?
This time, I'm not as confident.
For trial number 3, jurors would be from Pottawatomie County, Kansas. The defense requested a change of venue, and the judge agreed, citing excessive media coverage. It would take place in Westmoreland, a smaller, more rural area 60 miles away from the last setting in Topeka.
July 7, 2002 was going to be a good day. Mike Sisco, Karen Harkness, had been in a relationship for a few years.
The trial got underway with opening statements on February 7th, 2025.
One name just kept coming up, Dana Chandler.
Charles Kitt was back retrying the case, joined by prosecutor Dan Dunbar. Judge Cheryl Rios again presided. And in a last-minute change on the morning of opening statements, Dana Chandler dismissed her defense attorneys.
My name is Dana Chandler.
And Dana Chandler decided the best person to represent her was herself.
I am innocent. I did not kill Mike and Karen.
Tonight's 48 Hours will continue.
Listen and follow 48 Hours Postmortem wherever you get your podcasts.
I think this case is a character assassination.
In February 2025, Dana Chandler was on trial for the 3rd time for the murders of Mike Sisco and Karen Harkness. But this time, she was representing herself.
She was exercising her constitutional right. It was an unknown. It was certainly unexpected.
One thing that was the same as in the previous trials, Haley Seal testified.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Can you please tell the jury your name?
Haley Seal.
Haley was asked again by the prosecution about her mother's inappropriate behavior.
What sort of things would she say about Karen?
She called her a homewrecker, a slut, very bad names.
Prosecutors were also interested in an incident when Dana Chandler drove Haley and her brother to drop them off at Karen's house.
We waited there for a really long time in the car. Then my dad and Karen got there, and my mom got out and yelled at them and just was very angry with my dad.
Haley, I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
When it was time to be cross-examined, Haley knew it would now be her mother doing the questioning.
Well, Miss Seal?
I really went up there with like my game face on, you know. I knew it was war. I knew it wasn't gonna be a nice, a cordial, a thoughtful, you're the victim, this was your dad, and I'm so sorry place that she'd be coming from.
Dana Chandler challenged Haley about her description of that drop-off at Karen's. Chandler said it was Haley's father, Mike, who was behaving badly, not her.
When your dad and Karen drove up, your dad stormed over to the car.
Oh, no. No, he did not.
And he started banging on the window.
What? No, he did not. I was inside that car, and my dad absolutely did not bang on the windows.
And I didn't get out of it. I never got out of the car.
You were the first one out of the car.
I was just in disbelief because I knew she just made that up because it never happened and he never did that. But I didn't get concerned. I just said, no, you know, I'm glad you asked so I could straighten this out. That never happened. And then it comes down to who's believable. And I wasn't worried about that.
As another way to seemingly explain some of her past behaviors, Chandler brought up that she used to have a drinking problem.
And I did tell you that I realized that I had a problem with alcohol.
You did tell me you had a problem with alcohol.
Something Dana said she stopped by 1999, 3 years before the murders.
I told you I was going to 3 AA meetings a day, trying to get well. True?
I knew you were trying to get well, yes.
The state questioned, though, if becoming sober changed Chandler's behavior.
When she came back clean and sober, did that change how she treated you?
No.
Did it change how she talked about your dad?
No.
Did it change how she talked about Karen?
No.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this case happened, you're going to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Dana Chandler not only thought she was the best person to represent herself, but when it was time to put on her defense, she decided she would be her own main witness.
But I feel like that I need to kind of tell my story to kind of put things in perspective.
She testified over 7 days.
You have not seen evidence that I was in Topeka, Kansas on July 7th of 2002.
Speaking for about 20 hours.
I'd kind of like to review a little where I left off.
There was times when she would take so long to try to get her point across.
Dana Chandler's supporter, Darrell Burton, was concerned when she put herself on the stand.
And sometimes it seemed as though she was just rambling, you know, and that was just unfortunate. She probably knew where she was trying to go, but she'd get lost.
But I continued drinking.
She again addressed issues such as her drinking and inappropriate conversations with Haley.
I was writing emails, drinking to blackout. I'd get up the next morning and not even remember those emails. I had a serious problem. And horrible things I said about Karen spreading her legs. I mean, seriously, Haley was 14 years old. I am just so ashamed and embarrassed about that. And I hated that I put Haley through that.
And Chandler, in her own testimony, addressed again that incident when she waited outside Karen's house to drop off Haley and Dustin with the couple. She said it was done out of necessity.
I yelled through the window I could not afford to feed Haley and Dustin, and that I needed to leave them with him.
Chandler contrasted those times to when she stopped drinking, showing videos of her spending time outdoors with Haley and Dustin.
This video was taken about 9 months into my recovery.
Dana also disputed making frequent harassing calls to Karen and Mike, saying when she called, there was a reason.
I was just calling to speak with my children, Haley and Dustin.
As to her having disagreements with Karen Harkness, she testified there were none.
I never, ever had any confrontations with Karen Harkness at all.
Chandler also pointed out what she said was sloppiness in the police investigation. When Chandler questioned lead detective Richard Voley, she asked about whether police were too focused on her and should have been looking more thoroughly at other possible suspects.
Did you or did you not receive any leads for other suspects besides me?
Early on in the investigation, there were several other people that were looked at as possible leads. So it's a matter of checking people off, to dismissing people that couldn't have done it. When we can't dismiss them, we keep focusing on them, like we did with you.
Chandler, though, said there was an area where she felt law enforcement thoroughly investigated. Whether she bought a 9mm gun like the one used in the murders. And they came up empty-handed.
I've never owned, purchased, or possessed a 9mm firearm.
And throughout her defense, Dana Chandler was adamant that at the time of the murders, she was in Colorado, and no one could place her in Karen's house, or even in Kansas. It seemed like a simple question Dana Chandler was asking Detective Voley.
Did you ever develop any information that I was in Topeka, Kansas on July 6th or 7th of 2002?
But in answering that question, Voley said there was a woman named Patty Williams who may have spotted Chandler in the state of Kansas around the time of the murders.
What do you know about Patty Williams?
She was a clerk at a convenience store in Waukene, Kansas.
The gas station convenience store in Waukene, where Williams worked, was nearly halfway between Denver and Topeka. It had been visited by an investigator searching for locations where someone may have spotted Chandler around the time of the murders. There, the investigator showed Williams this photo of Dana.
She was 7 out of 10 that it was you.
According to Voley, the clerk was 70% sure she had seen Dana Chandler and described some distinguishing features.
She said that she had gray near the hairline around the temple.
Chandler, though, told the jury she did not have gray hair back then. By the time of the trials, Williams had died and could not be questioned again. Chandler also expressed concern that the investigator only showed a single photo of her initially, instead of an array of photos, including different people, something Voley did do when he went to the gas station about 2 weeks later.
We later went out with what we call a 6-pack photo. It's 6 photographs of people that look very similar, and amongst those photos was Miss Chandler.
Voley said Patty Williams immediately picked out Chandler, and again was 70% sure she saw her there. But Voley acknowledged using an array initially would have been better. There was still, for law enforcement, the issue regarding Dana Chandler's alibi. Remember, Voley said Dana told him she was home in her Denver apartment the night of the murders. But she told others, including an acquaintance, Jeff Bailey, she slept in her car in the Colorado mountains that night.
I was confused.
Dana Chandler told the jury she had been confused when she spoke with Voley, but Prosecutor Kitt was not accepting that explanation.
So what you told Detective Voley is not consistent with what you told Jeff Bailey, is it?
As far as my trip to...
Ms. Chandler, it's not consistent
that
with what you
part, okay, yeah, I would agree with that. That's true.
Have you seen that document before?
Once again, those secret recordings Haley made with her mother were played in court.
Ever think about killing him? No, but I did.
This time, Kit questioned Dana herself about its authenticity.
Was that your voice saying, did you ever think about killing him? I did.
It sounds like it, yes.
When it was time for the final witness, Dana Chandler decided it should be Dana Chandler. She knew the jury heard witnesses testify about her parenting and past behavior. Chandler explained if she was a less than attentive mother, it was because of her drinking and a lack of money, not a lack of love.
I absolutely did want to have a relationship with my children. You know, I think the financial, the substance abuse combination, it just wasn't feasible. That's all I have. Thank you. Any thoughts?
Ms. Chandler, during this time that you couldn't afford to feed your children, you were buying booze, correct?
I was.
You're buying enough alcohol to get blackout drunk?
I was.
Okay. Thank you. There for the questions.
Okay.
And with that, after 18 days of testimony, Prosecutor Charles Kitt and Dana Chandler presented their closing arguments.
Why are Mike and Karen dead? And the evidence shows one simple answer: control.
I think Kit nailed it when he said it was about control.
The state described Chandler losing control of Mike as he planned his future with Karen and the rage that followed.
And that's what led to the defendant traveling to Topeka, Kansas on July 6th and murdering them on July 7th.
Kit spoke about Chandler's depiction of events not lining up with the testimony of others.
It's the defendant versus everyone. You can believe the defendant's testimony, or you can believe everybody else that you heard from in this case.
In Dana Chandler's closing, she used a scale to make her point that prosecutors, whom she called her accusers, did not have enough evidence to tip it in their favor.
The accusers must tip the scale. Here I'm innocent. I have my infirmities and I have my shortcomings. But I do stand here before you all today and proclaim that I am an innocent woman.
She acknowledged the life she led was not perfect, but said that doesn't make her a murderer.
The state has woefully failed to meet its burden to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that I killed Mike Sisco or Karen Harkness.
About 4 hours later, the jury delivered its verdict.
We, the jury, find Dana Chandler guilty of murder in the first degree as charged in count 1. Verdict from count
Guilty
2.
of the murders of Mike Sisco and Karen Harkness. After hearing the verdict, Dana Chandler turned away. And while it was the verdict Haley hoped for, the end result is nothing she ever wanted.
It is so much worse that my mom is the one behind these murders because we lost my dad and Karen, but then through all this now we've lost our mom. I really wish it was someone else.
I don't believe that they have proved this case beyond a reasonable doubt.
Chandler's supporter, Darrell Burton, remains undeterred. He still believes she is innocent.
The evidence just doesn't, prove that she's guilty of anything.
Dana Chandler is filing motions for an appeal. 48 Hours reached out to Chandler again for this episode, but did not receive a response.
I am very confident in this verdict.
District Attorney Mike Kagay is certain the jury convicted the right person.
I have every confidence in my prosecutors and how they handled this case.
The focus of this case has gone almost completely to Dana Chandler, and that the victims has really been lost, which is really sad.
More than 20 years have passed since Mike Sisco and Karen Harkness were murdered, and Haley wants to make sure the lives lost are not forgotten.
I was trying to tell my daughter about who my dad is. And I said, he was a really fun, supportive, encouraging guy who believed in me and my brother. And Karen was so kind, so accepting. I miss him a lot.
home.